Good morning and welcome everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. The Professional Service Group of Mercer County is a group that is here for you, anybody that is in any kind of career transition. It doesn't matter why you're in a career transition, like what happened to me twice. It was an employer decision. Sometimes we make our own decision as we change the careers. So we'll go down a different career path. Maybe you're returning to the workforce after a gap, took care of family, or had some need at home. Doesn't matter. We're here to provide resources and information, a little bit of guidance, and hopefully a little bit of fun on a Friday morning as well to anybody who's in any kind of career transition. In addition to being Happy Aloha Friday, as we do celebrate Aloha Friday at PSG of Mercer County, today is National Puzzle Day. So if you are someone that likes those brain teasers, you may want to take one out and play with one. Today is National Puzzle Day. And what a wonderful coincidence, because Yolanda Owens is here, and she's going to talk to us about one of the big puzzles called the ATS, the applicant tracking systems and the bots. And so a lot of us are puzzled by that, and hopefully she will help clear the path and help us understand a little bit more. Among the resources that we have for you, anyone who's a member or attendee of our group here in person or in virtual person, we do have our LinkedIn group. Our LinkedIn group is called PSG of Mercer County. You are all welcome to join our group. Just go on LinkedIn, go to the group section and search for PSG of Mercer County. And if you're not yet a member of the group, you'll be put in pending status. And about once or twice a week, we do look at the people that request. So if I recognize you or any of us who are managing that, we will immediately accept you into our group. And the reason why we put kind of that little bit of a front gate on our PSG group, we want to make sure we keep out the list collectors or the name collectors. We only want attendees and members of our LinkedIn group who know us, who know job seekers, who are really here to help others and help themselves as well, not just people looking to collect a gaggle of names. We have over 1,600 members in our LinkedIn group. It grows by a few every week, so I guess we'll get to 1,700 soon enough. And people and yourselves, as you join, you're welcome to share articles, share job leads. If there's a job fair, any virtual events, whatever you hear about, put those in the LinkedIn group to share them with others. One thing I get a couple times a week, someone will send me something, here, post this, and they send it to me. And while I'm appreciative that people think of the importance of whatever they have being posted, I get enough of those requests each week that I actually just thank the person and turn it back and say, no, why don't you post it on our LinkedIn group? So if you ever send me something to post and you wonder why I'm kind of pushing it back on you, I want you to post it because your activity on LinkedIn will help you in your LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn has its own search engine optimization, and active users are viewed more highly and positively than inactive users. So do participate in our LinkedIn group. Another thing that we have, excuse me, is our website. Our website is called psgofmercercounty.org. I'm going to quickly share it for you. Haven't shown it off in a while, and so just there it is. So psgofmercercounty.org. This is the website's homepage, and I know I talk about it every week. Want to let you know that we do have over 120 web pages on this website. It is not just the landing page with a wonderful picture of me in front, but it's a very important career resource, hopefully, for all of you. And how do we get from these links on top to over 120 pages? Well, if you look at career options, this second menu option right here, so what happens is we have sections here that help you with your career. If you want to get started with a job search, work as a consultant, if you have interest in franchising, starting a business, and volunteerism, and more. And if you see, this is just an introductory paragraph, but each section has a read more. So as you go to see read more, well, now it begins to talk a little bit more. Here it's talking about self-assessment, networking, online job searching, applying for positions online. And then they have their own information even further. So we've created a lot of depth to the website. And rather than putting just a tremendous amount of information and make the website like an eye chart right up front, we decided to layer it so you can get to the important information on your own without us just throwing everything out on one big page. So we did make a lot of pages that way, a lot of depth. On our event calendar, you can see that we are populated with each weekly event that's coming up. So here's the one for today with Yolanda. And so next week, you'll see it's Janice Coleman. So that's what's coming up. Notice there's no connection information in Janice's, but there was in Yolanda's. So we only keep the connection information for the meeting in the current week's meeting. And that's to minimize anybody accidentally clicking on the wrong week. And even if we go back to prior weeks, we remove the connection information as well. It changes each week. We'll come to open jobs in just a second. If you want to begin learning and getting tips and tricks about networking, so we have a tab dedicated for that. We think networking is sufficiently important. We gave it its own tab rather than as another page off of another menu. On our resources page has a tremendous amount of information also. As you can see, there are different professional resources. We've recently added these personal resources. We realize there's a lot of stress associated with your job search, maybe for yourself or within your family. And so we have these mental health resources. And then as you look in these professional resources, on the left side, we have networking groups. So if you want to know other groups that are in the area, and then we have other career resources. This ONET begins to generally list names of different roles and positions. So if you want to know, what the current names of a position might be, you might want to update your website from what your position was in a prior job to kind of what it's called now. The New Start Career Network is here, so you can have access to that. There are other career coaches that are here, again, the networking groups as we go down. So we have those as well. And then also, as we go a little bit further down, the municipal resources as well. And even towards the bottom, we have Pennsylvania, New York, and Delaware. So we have all those for our members. I've talked about the professional development tab a few times. There's a lot of information. These are some college courses that you can find. That's what this link is for. So the Rutgers MBA program and other local area courses that are like that. And in addition, we've talked about our e-learning classes. We now have 54 e-learning links to 54 e-learning websites. It's listed alphabetically, so you can just look at the different ones. This is an online learning platform for higher education professional. That's what this iVersity is. And it links right to them. And so that page will open up right next to our website, and you can learn a bit more about the programs that way. A lot of these programs are free. Some of them have a per class fee. Some of them require a subscription. They're not all free, but wanted to have kind of for all of you one-stop shopping to find e-learning. And our open jobs page, this has recently evolved over the past few months. It used to be called just the job boards, where you would click here like on Mercer, Burlington, or Huntington. This is basically Mercer County and the 6 border counties that all surround us. That's kind of the PSG of Mercer County service area. And then as you click through any ones, now each one works kind of the same way. There are up to 12 different categories that are here. These are education companies, education service companies, financial service, government, not-for-profit, travel and tourism, all these here. And then when you click on any one of those tabs, what you now have is a list of companies. So these are companies that do have some sort of presence in financial services in Mercer County. And then when you click on the company, you go right to their career page. So you can see if you're interested in a career with the Bank of Princeton, here are the positions that are available. So on our career page, on our job boards pages, we do not have our postings. These are those companies' postings. But what we recently added is to the open jobs page is a jobs postings page. This is pretty new, only a few months, and it's really kind of a blog format, so it's simple to use. But you can see in January, there are already 16 postings that are here. And these are all fairly current. And if you want to see older ones, you just click on the year or the month so you can see we've had some postings. And so this one is a production manager in Warminster, Pennsylvania. It is a full-time position. So if you're a production manager, you may want to read this. And this particular one, you apply via LinkedIn. And here's the link to LinkedIn. So this is a free service for those that post. It's free for them, so they're not paying a commission. And also, if you'd like, what you can do is you can search for the postings, or you can put in your email address, and then what will happen is it'll alert you. The system will send you an email when there's a new post that's made. So just wanted to share that real quickly with you, just so you get an idea that we do have that sort of functionality available in the website. So I know I talk about the website, so I thought I'd just show it off a little bit. What we're going to do, I'm going to introduce Yolanda in just a moment. The way we're going to do questions and answers this morning is we're going to use chat, and we're going to use it this way. We're going to use it as kind of your electronic way of raising your hand. LinkedIn actually has a raise the hand feature. GoToMeeting that we're using here does not. So what I would ask that you do in chat, just post the word question. Make sure you post it to everybody, so make sure that at least that I see it and Yolanda sees it. And then whenever you have the question, so if she's on slide 2 or 3 or 4 and you have a question as she's talking to it, kind of do your electronic at the time, and either I or she will then just stop her presentation. We'll ask you to turn on your microphone and then ask your question. So it'll be an opportunity for you to actually converse with Yolanda. So that may be a nice way. We've done that a few times. It seems to have worked out very well. And so we'll do that again today. And then when you're done with your Q&A with Yolanda, you'll just put yourself back on mute, and it'll show you to proceed or ask the next question. So that's what we will be doing this morning. And so to get us right to that point, I'll say that PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome Yolanda M. Owens. Yolanda is a career coach, an award-winning author, founder of Career Sensei Consulting, and former corporate recruiter with a passion for helping people succeed. Armed with 20 years of recruiting knowledge and coveted tricks of the trade, she imparts her knowledge of what employers truly seek in potential candidates from a recruiter's perspective. Yolanda's non-traditional approach to job seeking encourages clients to think outside the box and outside their comfort zones to better market their skills, attributes, and unique experiences. She works with individuals of all stages in their careers, but she has a soft spot for helping young professionals, mid-career level candidates, and candidates in a career transition. To learn more about Yolanda and her career coaching prowess, you can visit one of her 2 websites, yolandamoowens.com, yolandamoowens.com, and careersenseicoaching.com, careersenseicoaching.com. And that information will also be available later. So PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome the career sensei, Yolanda M. Owens.
Thank you so much, Dave. And are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes, I see you and your screen. Yep.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Aloha Friday, and thank you, Dave, for wearing the blue shirt. I appreciate it. It is a pleasure to be able to meet everyone. You guys seem like you're going to be a fun group. I've been hearing all the banter going back and forth, so I'm really excited to chat with you and get your questions and to tell you a little bit more about today's topics, which we're going to talk about, beating the box and getting your resume past the system and actually into some human hands. But before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about applicant tracking systems, since we're talking about applying online, and a little history about the usage of ATS, the applicant tracking systems. Applicant tracking systems started coming onto the scene in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, recruiters started using those as a replacement, so to speak, for file cabinets. Back in the day, they used to get applications and you had all of these rooms full of filing cabinets that you would file that information away in. And so they decided to digitize that and use applicant tracking systems where people can apply online to streamline things and make it a little easier, and also for compliance reasons to be able to audit that information without people coming into the office, things of that nature. So again, it kind of digitized it. But then as, we kind of hit, the dot-com era, and we saw, the bubble burst on a lot of different things. We saw huge increases in applications coming in. And so with that volume, applicant tracking systems kind of shifted gears, and you saw a little bit more in terms of, searching by keywords, and also you saw search engine optimization coming on the scenes with things like Google, things of that nature. And that's when kind of the employment landscape changed. I know for me, when I was recruiting, that, it wasn't uncommon for me to get 300 applications in a week for an open position. And it's common for recruiters to have anywhere between 15 to 25 positions open at one time. So you can only imagine what it's like trying to parse through all of those thousands of resumes. So like I said, key search words became essential to, being able to keep up with all of that information, and also making sure that you weren't overwhelmed with information. It was very common. I did a lot of entry-level recruiting, seeing someone, who was a dentist applying for an internship. And so, they may not fit the criteria, and I didn't want to spend a lot of time on those types of resumes. So keyword search words came in handy with that. And while that was handy, you also, as a recruiter, wanted to make sure that you weren't excluding, looking at job titles and things of that nature and similarities. But then, like I said, the key search words then became kind of key. And that was all in sync with search engine optimization. And I would tell you now, in modern times today, the search engine optimization and the key search words are probably going to be more useful on your LinkedIn profile as opposed to your resume. So yes, it's great for your resume, but you also want to make sure that you're including some of those keywords in your LinkedIn profile. I would tell you that probably about 80% of recruiters spend most of their active time on LinkedIn, which is the reason why LinkedIn a few years ago got really smart and started doing job postings. And they are now the #1 job board, above Indeed and ZipRecruiter and all those other job boards that are out there. Again, they got smart. They knew that that's where recruiters were actively searching for candidates. So now recruiters kind of have a one-stop shop where they can search for candidates, and they can also post positions from one platform. So it is my guess that LinkedIn, and in the near future, may take over for some applicant tracking systems. It might become an applicant tracking system at some point in time. But right now, that's kind of where recruiters are spending a lot of their time. So again, you want to make sure that you are optimizing the information not only on your resume, but also on your LinkedIn profile. So what are some of the good and bad and the ugly things that have come along with, using applicant tracking systems? Again, it's great because, it's easier to parse down those thousands of resumes, but it's also made recruiting a bit harder. And the reason being is that, what has happened now is that we've created a system where it's designed for people to want to cheat it, where they feel as though, just adding a bunch of buzzwords or things of that nature to get into the system, and not necessarily being able to speak to their accomplishments, that has become an issue. I know for me, and I've done resume writing for a number of years, that kind of started for me as a side hustle in college that never went away. So that's one of my main focuses, is that I'm also a resume writer. And I found, as a recruiter and as a resume writer, key search words are a double-edged sword. Yes, it's great for being able to parse through information, but again, it's also caused people to want to cheat the system. And so oftentimes, as a recruiter, it was frustrating for me because I had, resumes that I would look at, and I'd contact people only to find out that they didn't have those skills, or they just copy and pasted a job description just so they could get their foot in the door. And that doesn't bode well for anyone's time. Yes, it's great you get a chance to speak with a recruiter, but if I have 25 positions that I'm trying to fill and I'm trying to optimize my time, that's not always a good source. So yes, it's great to try to get your foot in the door. And these things are in place, yes, to try to make life easier, but also you want to be respectful of individuals' time and also be truthful about your information. So, keeping that in mind when you are putting together your resume or going through your job search and, putting together your plan, you want to make sure that you're not putting your eggs all in one basket. Just not relying on applying online. Make sure that you have a plan that includes some other things in your arsenal. Again, not putting all your eggs in one basket and kind of diversifying your job search portfolio so you can get the biggest return on your investment with your time and your efforts at the end of the day. So with that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the common resume mistakes that I've seen over the years as both a recruiter and a resume writer. As I mentioned before, it's very easy to try to cheat the system. And so what I found people to do is that they fall under one of three buckets. They give a list of all their daily duties, or they list every position that they've had since their third grade spelling bee. Or what they do is they pepper their resume with a constellation of keywords or buzzwords, or they target the wrong jobs, or just kind of cast a wider net and kind of spam the system again with the hopes of getting their foot in the door. And sometimes that's effective, but often, more times than not, it's going to be a path to radio silence. So, what you really want to do is to make sure that you are comfortable talking about your skills and how that transfers to the types of roles that you're interested in. It's not really about cheating the system or making sure that you have a lot of buzzwords, but again, knowing what your transferable skills are, how those align with the types of roles that you're targeting, whether you are, going into a similar job title or you're making a career pivot, then, want to make sure that you're focusing on that. And especially with career transitioners who are making a career pivot where you started in one career and now you're going into another, those key search words are going to be, critical for you, and also adding some other elements to your resume. Because, key search words can kind of put you at a disadvantage. If you are looking to make that transition, but you have been, from, say, for example, you were a librarian and now you're looking to be an underwater basket weaver, you're going to have a whole lot of librarian skills on your resume, but not necessarily for an underwater basket weaver. So, how do you relay some of those transferable skills that you may have had as a librarian that might apply to being to the next role that you're going to be, targeting. So those are some key things that you want to think about when you're putting together your resume. So what are some things that you should be focusing on? Again, you shouldn't really be concerned or worried about templates, or like I said, copying and pasting job descriptions, or worrying about a bunch of buzzwords. What you really should be concentrating on are what employers concentrate on and what they focus on, and what are the things that are going to separate you from the competition. Again, the problem with the keywords and the buzzwords is that everyone sounds alike, and if they're copying and pasting a job description, or you are peppering the resume with all of these buzzwords, how do recruiters or how are they going to differentiate you from the competition? The example I like to use is that, you have 300 candidates who are applying for a job to make widgets. How do you discern the best widget maker if they all say that they've been doing that for the last 5 years? So you really want to talk about your accomplishments. You want to say that you've produced widgets for the last 5 years for ABC companies, but what's going to discern you as a good widget maker is if you can say that you've done that for the past 5 years and you've been able to do that with 25% fewer defects and 15% under budget for the last 4 quarters. That's a much more compelling story. So what you want to do is you want to focus on your accomplishments. and also, like I said, those transferable skills and and also your personality. Those are the three key things that employers are going to focus on. And again, those are the three things that are going to discern you from and differentiate you from the competition. Your accomplishments, those things that you've done in your role that move the needle, that made the job better than when you started in. Those are the conversations that employers are going to want to have with you. And those are the kind of things, again, that are going to differentiate you from the other 299 people who have applied for the job. And then also those transferable skills, those things that you bring with you to the table that are going to be attractive regardless of what type of role that you're applying to. And then also your personality. Employers are no longer just hiring based on skill set. They also want to make sure that you're going to be a good cultural fit for whatever team or organization that you're joining. So it's going to be really important for you to give them an idea of who you are as a work persona and those things that kind of make you tick. So let's break each of these three things down a little further. Let's talk a little bit about the accomplishments. So what you want to talk about with your accomplishments, again, are those relevant highlights. And what I mean by relevant highlights are those things that you've done, like I mentioned before, that made the job better, but are going to be relevant to the types of positions that you are applying to. So if, breaking it down and kind of looking at some of the job descriptions and what are some of those key things that they're looking for, and what have you done that, again, proud accomplishments that you've had that are going to demonstrate that you've done that. And then being able to quantify that impact. And that doesn't necessarily mean assigning a number to it. Again, that's talking about what you did to make that job better. Was it, being able to, deliver on things, or being able to win over people in terms of, getting business development and winning people's trust. There are some things that, you can't put into numbers, but can still show that you move the needle to make things better. Focus on those proud accomplishments. And, what I like to think about in terms of the accomplishments and the skills and the personality is that, you want to kind of put together an executive summary about yourself and your story of what you've brought to the table over your career. And again, it doesn't need to be a laundry list of every accomplishment that you've had since your third grade spelling bee. You really want to be targeted in that and focus on those relevant highlights. Those things that you did, again, that move the needle, the things that you can quantify, and the things that show and demonstrate that you're able to do that job. So in my opinion, the resume should give enough high-level information to pique the reader's interest, and also leave enough information out for them to want to continue the conversation with you. So if you can do that successfully, and again, be able to pique their interest with the highlights that you put on the resume, then they're going to want to pick up the phone and want to talk to you about how you went about doing that. So that's kind of the sweet spot that you want to touch upon there. And then with the moving on to the second one here, the transferable skills, what you want to talk about there. And a lot of people have a hard time talking about, what those transferable skills should be. I tell people a real easy way to figure out your transferable skills is to ask yourself, what are your superpowers? What are those things that you do that make you good at your job? And what you don't want to do is talk in generalities. You don't want to say, well, I'm a great communicator, or I'm really good at multitasking. Those are great, but are they specific to your job of what makes you good at what you do? Is that specific to the job? Is that going to be specific to the types of skills and attributes that the job descriptions you're looking at are looking for? And again, you can say that you are a good communicator or you're good at multitasking, but anybody can say that. That's hard to put on paper to prove. So again, what you want to do is to talk about those skills and those superpowers that you have that you can then back up and align with the accomplishments on your resume. So Are you are you good with project management? And if so, talk about, some of the things that have moved the needle on some of the projects that you've worked on. Are you proficient in, programming in a particular language, and what are some of those projects that have demonstrated your prowess in those things? So again, talking about tangible specifics and not those generalities, again, that are going to show some of the things that apply to the types of roles that you've been in, or the types of roles that you're targeting, and those things that you've done in those roles to focus on that. So again, you want to be strategic and you want to be really focused and not talk too much in generalities, but talk about those things that make you really good at what you do and being able to back those things up with those accomplishments. And then finally, again, adding in a piece of that personality. I made this a real key piece of my resume writing after being a college recruiter for a number of years. And as you know, a lot of college students, they don't have a lot of experience. And the common complaint that I heard from these individuals or these students is that, I do have a lot of skills and there's a lot of things that I bring to the table. And if they could just talk to me or find out a little bit more about my personality, then they'd like me. So, making sure that you infuse a little bit of that personality into your resume, so you're just not a bunch of words on paper, that it kind of brings it to life and brings you to life and makes you more than just, another applicant in the tracking system. So a couple of ways of doing that is to add a profile or summary to your resume, putting that at the top, similar to what you do with your About section on your LinkedIn profile. Do a brief profile or summary, and use that instead of an objective, or even in place of a cover letter in some instances, where you talk about some of the things that you're looking for in your next role. Talk a little bit about what fuels your productivity and what makes you feel comfortable and productive at work. And then, the type of environment that fuels that productivity makes you feel comfortable and feel purposeful at work. What are those things that, are your wants, the things that are going to be deal breakers, and those things that you're willing to compromise on that are going to make you happy at work? So give them a sense of that. And, talk about, again, who you are. If you're a manager, talk a little bit about your management style. Or how it is that you like to work. Again, this is going to give them a feel on whether or not you're going to be a good fit for the company culture or for the team dynamic that you're going to be entering, and how you're going to be able to add value to that dynamic. And it's also kind of a weeding out process by putting that information on your resume. It's going to let the employer know, what you bring to the table, and also it's, again, going to be a weeding out factor in that if the employer doesn't resonate with that, you're going to make sure that the right type of employers are contacting you. Because again, if that's something that resonates with you, then they're going to bypass you, and that's saving both of you time.
Excuse me, Yolanda?
Yes.
Yes, so we have a question from
Oh,
Pat.
yes, awesome. Okay,
So
great.
Pat Monahan, if you could just quickly unmute yourself and have that question.
Okay.
Hi, Pat.
Good morning, and I'm hoping it is a good morning. As you were going through this, the personality part. If some people have difficulty in expressing their personality to see if they would fit, is there any advantage in taking those personality tests? For example, I'll use Myers-Briggs because that's a very common one, and take some of the things that they outline as your personality and use them as a guide to update your resume?
Oh, absolutely. And I've oftentimes with people's resumes, or if I'm writing a cover letter for them, instead of using traditional methods, I might put on a resume kind of like a vital sign, which may talk about things about what your Myers-Briggs is. For some executives, I might even put what their Starbucks order is. Again, adding some personality and letting them know who you are as a person and as a professional again, is just going to give them some ways of looking at that. So don't feel like you have to write that in a formal paragraph. Demonstrate that however you feel comfortable. If that's highlighting some key things from your Myers-Briggs or some other things that you feel bring personality to the resume and also to who you are as a person at work, then that's going to be information for them, and it's either going to resonate with them or it's not. And if it resonates with them, then great, you know that you found your tribe. And if it doesn't, you're dodging a bullet, and that's probably not people that you want to work with anyway. But yes, using things like Myers-Briggs or using other tools, if you're not good with words that can express that for you, absolutely. Any way and resources that you can use to help you do that. I absolutely,
Thank you.
co-sign that. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for the question. Are there any other questions before I move on? I've been doing a lot of chatting, so I'd love to get some questions from the audience before I move forward.
No one else has digitally raised their hand, so
Okay.
anyone who is interested in asking Yolanda a question, just type the word question right in chat, and I will find a nice point to just excuse myself and have you ask the question.
Right, we'll give it a couple of seconds to see if anybody asks any before I move on to the next slide.
Okay, yes, they still need a moment or two to type questions.
Right, exactly.
Yes, it's not as easy to just raise a hand. But yep, anyone, if you're interested, please feel free to ask a question. Oh, there's one, John Sampson. So John, just unmute yourself and please ask your question.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Good morning, John.
I wondered if you have any sense of the extent to which ATSs are installed in corporate America.
Oh goodness, I would probably say around 90% of companies use applicant tracking systems. Again, it's more for compliance reason than anything else. So yes, I read a statistic the other day that said roughly 90% of companies use them.
And in those corporations, the search capabilities in those ATS systems would be used most of the time?
It varies. It varies. And it varies with the recruiting team. There are some teams that I know that people use those applicant tracking systems for searching for candidates. I know recruiters who solely just use job boards or just use LinkedIn. So that's individual to, to the recruiter and how those recruiting teams like to operate.
I guess where I'm going with this is if they're using ATSs and it's a basic search, to what extent would words, for instance, under your category of personality, ever even be in there?
Well, mainly if you're using key search words, it might be more for job titles or for, like I said, transferable skills and things of that nature. So, and I'm going to dive into that a little bit more. I'm going to actually show you kind of a sample resume to talk about some of those things to kind of give you a visual of what that looks like. But in general, I mean, yes, you want to worry about those things for the applicant tracking system and, getting that initial look, but they're not just looking at key search words. They're also going to be looking at those other things. And like I said, the key here is to distinguish yourself from the competition. And so, we're talking about the search optimization, but we're also about selling yourself as a candidate. Because at the end of the day, that's really what's going to get your foot in the door. Yes, you can have key search words, but if I pick up the phone and talk to you and you don't have those skills, or you're not able to talk about yourself, or the resume doesn't have enough substance besides, copying and pasting a job description and having those key search words in it, then that's really not going to serve you well. So you need to look at the bigger picture and how you need to talk about yourself and doing that up front, because that's going to in turn turn into talking points for other aspects of your job search. So you want to be comfortable and well-rounded from the get-go. That way you're not catching up once you do get those calls and you start into the job search in the candidacy process.
Would your advice be if we have a spec about a job that we write to the spec?
No, you write to your experience. And I find that often that's where most people fail, is that they try to write to the job spec instead of writing to your experience. Your experience at the end of the day isn't going to change. So talk about your experience, and that's what's going to tell the recruiter whether or not you're a good fit for the job. And you don't have to feel as though everything, you don't have to tick all of the boxes on the requirements. My rule of thumb is that if you hit about 60% of what the job posting is asking for, then go ahead and throw your hat into the ring. You have nothing to lose but a little time and opportunity, but you at least need to have some of those basics in order to be able to throw your hat in the ring. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Great questions. Thank you. Awesome. Well, I'm going to move on to the next slide and kind of give you a visual of what things should look like. So this is a sample, and first and foremost, what you want to make sure is that, oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that, is to make sure that you have your contact information on your resume, and making sure that you have that, someplace at the top. Because applicant tracking systems often, scan through resumes much like a recruiter would. So that's often the first thing that recruiters are going to look for, is your contact information. So you don't need to have your street address on your resume. It's probably best that you don't, for security purposes, using applicant tracking systems, because you don't want anybody using that information for dubious reasons, or you may even have recruiters that have less than honorable intentions, and you don't want anybody you don't want showing up at your front door. So for security purpose, I would say don't put your address on your resume. Instead, keep it very, very simple. Keep it to your cell phone number or whatever telephone number you want to be reached at, your email address where you're going to be checking frequently, as well as the a hyperlink or the URL to your LinkedIn profile. Because those are going to be the three key things for them, a recruiter or an employer contacting you. They're either going to call you, they're going to email you, and I can tell you 9 times out of 10, if a person sees your resume and they like it, they're going to look you up online, and LinkedIn is going to be the first place that they're going to go. So if you can give them that LinkedIn profile, the link to that in your contact information, it's a nice little courtesy for them. Then, if you like, you can also feel free to, put a job title in there. And this really speaks as well to a LinkedIn profile. I tell people when they're writing their LinkedIn profiles, or if they're putting a job title on their resume, is that you want to put the job title of the job you want, not the job that you currently have or just got out of. Reason being is, going back again to those career pivoters or those career transitioners, if you are moving into a new industry or a new sector, you don't want people contacting you for what you are trying to transition out of. So you want to take the audience where you want them to go. So again, if you are, were a librarian and now you're looking to be an underwater basket weaver, then you need to put aspiring underwater basket weaver as your job title. That way, if they're doing key search words for job titles, you're going to pop up at the top of those searches. So that's a key thing that you want to take note of. And then also, like I said, instead of putting, what has been traditionally been an objective, putting down a profile or summary that is going to add some personality to your resume. Telling the reader a little bit about what you bring to the table, what it is that you're looking for in your next role, and again, who you are as a professional. It makes you feel productive and purposeful at work. That'll be very, very important for them to kind of see a little bit more about and dig a little deeper some of those things that aren't going to be in your bullet points. So another key thing when you're writing your profile or summary, and you're thinking about how to add that piece or that personality piece, another resource is for you to ask yourself, what would I like employers to know about me that's currently not on my resume? And give them a couple of sentences about that. Again, oftentimes that's what you may put into a cover letter. But again, this is going to give them a one-stop shop to look at that. And if they're taking that 7 to 10 second cursory glance, looking for certain things, there'll be some key things there that they might be able to pick up in that cursory glance that could be to your benefit and differentiate you from the competition. The next key thing that you want to focus on are your skills and possibly your technology if you're in that space, or if that's something that you're seeing, the job descriptions requiring. This is where you're really going to highlight when we were talking about those transferable skills. And again, you want to stay away from talking about those generalities and be very, very specific to the types of roles that you're targeting. Cynthia does media production, and she's also been an account executive. So she made sure that the skills that she had listed here align with that. So, she's doing content production, and she's done supervisory production, talking about that medium productions. She's done engagement programs, and she's done, community relations. And if you look in her summary and her profile section here, she says that she's seeking opportunities to pivot her skills to strategy and operations and fundraising and development. So that's letting, again, the audience know that she's making that career pivot in those areas that she's pivoting towards. And then she's making sure that she's putting some of those things in her resume. The fact that she's worked in community relations, and again, those engagement programs, and then you've done some public relations, some brand management. So she's tying in those things that she's done throughout her career that tie into the role that she has just been leaving, and then apply to the roles that she's currently targeting. So that'll be really, really helpful for her, and also for the reader to understand some of those parallels as to what she's done. And then what you also may want to consider doing once you start listing, your experience, sorry about that. When you're talking about your experience, is listing your relevant experience first. I know that, those of us who, aren't millennials have been taught that you should be doing a chronological resume, that you just list all of your work history in reverse chronological order. What's become more prevalent and more popular is doing kind of a hybrid resume where it's both functional and chronological. So with that functional resume, what you may want to do is target your relevant experience. So those roles and responsibilities that you've had that are going to most closely align with the types of jobs that you're targeting. Put those roles first and list those as your relevant experience. Again, what you want to do is to take the reader where you want them to focus on. So by putting that experience and grouping that under your relevant experience, you're going to shine a spotlight on those transferable skills and those things that you've done that align to the jobs that you're interested in. And that's what the reader is going to see first. So list that relevant experience and those roles at the beginning of your resume. And like I said, title it relevant experience. And then, those other jobs that you have that aren't going to be as pertinent or relevant to the roles that you're interested in, you can just list that as other experience, and you don't need to include any bullet points with that. Just list it as kind of a work history so they can see that you've had some other roles and see what those job titles are. But again, the focal point is going to be on those roles and responsibilities that most closely align to the types of roles that you're targeting. And then, again, going back to highlighting the accomplishments, what we've done here with Cynthia is list those as key highlights. And so instead of giving a laundry list of daily duties, we've got some of the daily duties in there, but also quantifying some of those accomplishments, those things that we talked about earlier that she felt moved the needle and made the job better, things that she was proud of that, again, improved and enhanced the role during the time that she was there. So again, doing kind of a hybrid of that to give a full picture, and like I said, giving enough high-level information that's going to pique the reader's interest, but not giving every detail there, so there's nothing left to the imagination. You want to leave them hanging just a little bit, so they'll want to pick up the phone, continue the conversation with you, and talk to you a little bit about how you accomplished those things and how you made those things happen.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions, Yolanda.
Wonderful. I was just about to ask if anyone had any questions. Perfect timing.
So this was right about when you transition to this slide. Mike is asking, which position levels are not seen through the ATS? And Mike Wheeland, if you want, you can open your mic to ask, but that's what Mike is asking. Which position levels are not through the ATS?
Yes, if you want to unmute, I'd love to get a little bit more clarification what you mean by that, Mike. And thank you so much for the question.
Hi, Yolanda. Good to see you.
Yes, you as well.
I'm more interested in, are there certain levels that you're applying for? They could be temporary, they could be CEO or senior level management positions, as opposed to the regular type of positions that may bypass the ATS system.
I would say that it depends on the types of roles that you're applying to. Are you applying to senior level positions? So I don't think that it's that wouldn't be the question for the recruiter. That would be more the question for you as the types of roles that you're targeting, and how your experience aligns with that. And it could also be the case that you are looking to kind of elevate your game and to advance up the career trajectory and move into the next level. Say, for example, going from a manager to a director level position. So again, the key search words, I don't know necessarily apply to that. That's going to be more or less, again, the accomplishments, the kind of job titles that you've had and how those skills align, because job titles and levels are kind of sticky because there's not a standard for that. What could be an entry-level position one place could be a mid-level position at another place, or what's considered a mid-level position could be a director-level position in another company. So there's a lot of gray variances between those. So I don't think that's an area that you need to pay a lot of attention to or to spend a lot of time worrying about. Again, worrying more about those transferable skills and, again, how your relevant experience aligns to the types of roles that you're targeting is going to be of more importance. So that's why I'm diving into that a little bit more when talking about this.
I'm also thinking of, in addition to what you said, and thank you for your response there, is that sometimes it's wise to, we've been advised to send your resume to the most senior person that you know of. As an example, you could send it to the CEO of a company. Now, although the position has been advertised and everyone's submitting their resumes and it's going through the ATS system, the CEO may hand it to the HR person and say, I want this person. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and I'm wondering whether that sort of, you have in a way circumvented the ATS system.
Yes. And, that's going back to what I said at the beginning, is that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and rely solely on, applying through applicant tracking systems is the sole means for your job search. You want to diversify that portfolio and make sure that you're using some other things. Now, I wouldn't advise sending it to the CEO. The CEO has greater things to worry about and usually isn't totally aware of what kind of positions are open or doesn't touch that piece of things. I mean, if it's a personal friend or what have you, then, that's one thing. But I will say that it is, if you have an inside connection with a company or even through 6 degrees of separation, and you can get yourself referred somehow, that is absolutely beneficial. Many companies have what's called employee referral programs, and recruiters rely on that pretty heavily for the recruitment efforts, and they love referrals. It's kind of that birds of a feather mentality, and it's also less work for them because they've kind of already been vetted. So if you can get yourself referred by someone on the inside, like I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be the most senior person And it doesn't necessarily have to, be the CEO of a company, but someone on the inside who's an employee who wants to refer you can absolutely do so. And oftentimes, if the company has a formal program, you can get some sort of, monetary compensation depending on how far along that candidate gets, through the hiring process. So that I absolutely would encourage to do. But just randomly, sending your resume to, CEOs or, senior leadership within a company, hoping that, they're going to send your resume along, doesn't always work. But like I said, if there's someone that you trust and know, or like I said, through 6 degrees of separation, can put you in through a referral, then, those tend to go to the top of the totem pole in terms of getting reviews or at least a courtesy response.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a couple of more questions queued up. Patricia Toto asked, is it okay to put a designation after your name, like a degree?
Yes.
She's heard
that's a great question. Yes, and it's funny, I had this conversation with someone that I'm working with, a client, with her resume. She currently works in hospitality, and she has an MBA, and she is looking now to start applying towards for marketing positions at a director level. And so I had the conversation. I was like, how comfortable would you be adding the MBA to your name? And she was afraid, in terms of, well, maybe that's going to make me look as though, I'm pricing myself out of the water. I'm like, no, you've not worked in a director level position before. So having that MBA next to your name could give you some street credibility, and also, give you some respect for having that after your name. And also making sure that you're going to be compensated, accordingly, based on the experience that's on your resume.
So I've heard mixed things. I've heard that some ATSs will pick it up as part of your name if it is a designation that is not, for example, if it's not an MBA, if it's not RN, and sometimes that it happens with Master of Arts, MA. It'll pick it up as part of your name. Have you heard that?
It is, and applicant tracking systems are quirky. I wouldn't worry so much about that with the applicant tracking system. That just means that it's going to, add that to your name. But in terms of the other qualifications and things of that nature, trust me, the applicant tracking system isn't going to kick you out because it can't translate your name. So don't worry. Don't worry about that.
How should you do it then? Should it be your name, comma? What should be the format then?
Yeah, you can put your name,
comma, then M.A. and then whatever else after that.
You can put MA or or PMP or SPHR if you're in the HR field. So there's a number of designations. So you can put the comma and then put the the acronym for that designation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Great question.
Also, Marissa has a question, Marissa Charles. So unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hi, Marissa.
Hi, thanks so much for this. I'm looking for work in the nonprofit sector as a program manager. But of course, program manager, project manager, it is across all sectors. So I'm putting a lot of things like not-for-profit program manager, NGO program manager. Is this going to get me, are the recruiters looking for those industry words? And is this going to get me onto their radar without being too general?
Yes, absolutely. And again, if you don't want to be, contacted for a technical program or project manager position, then yes, you definitely want to put some specification around there so you're getting contacted for the right types of roles. So yes, so putting those kind of indicators in there is helpful. And again, it's kind of a weeding out process.
And would I need to put like all the different terminology they use, like nonprofit, not-for-profit, non-governmental? Do I want to have all three of those somewhere in my resume to be picked up?
No, not necessarily. And again, I'm going to go back to, with your LinkedIn profile. That's going to be more specific to that. Because chances are someone's going to be reaching out to you or looking at those types of things using that kind of, specifics in their search is probably going to be using search engine optimization, not necessarily in an applicant tracking system, but through something like LinkedIn. So putting those types of things in your LinkedIn profile, there's a section on the LinkedIn profiles for skills and endorsements. And so you can specify some of those things there. And that way, like I said, if they are doing a Boolean search or a Google search and they're looking for some of those key search words, it would be picked up there. And like I said, they would find you in terms of your LinkedIn profile.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and there's also a question from someone called Admin. I don't know if that's the spy name. So if you know who you are, if your relevant experience is from 4 or 5 years ago, is it still okay to put this as the first entry in relevant experience?
Absolutely.
An admin, you can unmute if you know which admin you are.
Jim, and that's my question. If you're looking for a job where your experience is more like relevant from, say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that's still be put as the first entry in the relevant experience section, even though it's like kind of dating yourself from, say, maybe 4 or 5 years back?
Yeah, so in that case, if that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, you may want to put under the relevant experience, if you want to put first the last position that you had, just so you show that there's not a huge gap, and then putting that one second, then that can work in your favor if that's making you a bit uncomfortable. But yes, if you're transitioning, you took a break from one career, you started doing something else, or life happened and you went into something else, and now you're going back to your initial career, that absolutely makes sense. So again, you want to take the reader where you want them to go, and shine that spotlight about the skills that are going to be the most relevant for you. And like I said, if you want to add your most recent experience first, the most recent job that you had first, and then list that second, just to kind of put some buffer in between there, that's perfectly fine.
So even though the dates are kind of out of order, it's still okay to put the more relevant info really up top then.
Right, and that's what I was saying before, is that it's going to be a bit of a hybrid. You're not going to be doing the traditional listing your work history in reverse chronological order. You're going to be doing more of a functional resume, which you're going to be pointing out what's going to be most relevant in terms of those functions, and then listing the rest of your work history as other experience.
Should you exclude the dates in that particular situation then, where your more relevant skills are more like from years ago?
Well, that's up to you. That's completely up to you. I would say that if the experience is more than 10 years ago, you probably don't want to list it on the resume, just because ageism is a real thing, and you don't want anybody, discriminating against you with regards to age. I would say, yes, you do need to add the dates on there. I know it's always a red flag for me if you don't have the dates, and then I'm going to go check your LinkedIn profile to see, where you work, because LinkedIn is going to require you to put the dates in. It's automatically going to put that in there for you. So I'm gonna cross-check that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, thank you. Let's move along.
All right. Alrighty. Well, now that I've kind of walked you through and given you, some visuals in terms of Cynthia's resume, I want to just, give you some additional tips about, applying. We've touched upon some of these things with some of your amazing questions. So, some additional tips are, make sure that you are applying to roles that you qualify for. Again, you don't have to tick the box on, 100% of those things. If you have at least 60% of those qualifications, then, apply for those roles. And, again, apply to roles that seem interesting to you. And also make sure that you aren't letting imposter syndrome filter roles out for you. I know that it's very, very common to, feel as though that, either you've been let go from a job, or you need to find a job right away, or to feel as though you may have been out of the market for a little while. And so you downgrade yourself, and instead of applying for jobs at your level, you're willing to take anything. You're applying for an entry-level role or what have you, just to get your foot in the door. Again, that may end up getting you that radio silence if you're applying for something that's above your level. Because if it's an entry-level job and I'm looking at your resume and I see 10 years plus experience, you've already priced yourself out of the water with that. However, if you are a career transitioner and you've done something else for 10 years and you're looking for an entry-level position because it's a new area for you to explore, again, that's why that profile, that summary section is really important, to be able to spell that out there and say that, yes, I've been doing this for 10 years and I'm looking now to transition or to segue into a new industry or into a new area. These are the things that I bring to the table and from some of my prior experience. But again, don't let that imposter syndrome make you feel as though you have to downgrade yourself in order to qualify for a position or to disqualify yourself for a position. Apply for roles that look interesting to you, regardless of, again, of the job title, but again, making sure that you're not shortchanging yourself in terms of challenge or in terms of salary. Okay. And then the other thing is make sure that you don't spam apply. I had a client I was working with the other day who is really interested in a company. So he basically applied to every entry-level and mid-level position that they had available, hoping that someone would read his resume. And he got contacted for a job. It wasn't a job that he necessarily really wanted, but yes, he ended up doing an interview. Didn't bode well for him, so it wasn't the best experience. It got his foot in the door, but again, from a recruiter's lens, if I see your name popping up for every open position that I have within an area, that means that you're not being too discerning. And again, that's kind of a level of desperation. And it also, may be a sign of either, lack of maturity or lack of focus. So you want to demonstrate to the employers that you're being strategic and that you're not willing to settle for just anything. Because if you put that out there and it makes it look as though you're looking to settle for anything, you're setting yourself up to be taken advantage of. And you don't want that when you're in an active job search. You want to be able to position yourself and compete for roles that are going to be at your level and that are going to, value you for what you bring to the table. So again, be strategic with that. And then also, don't cheat the system. Again, be respectful of not only your time, but those individuals who are on the other side, who have to farm through thousands of candidates trying to find that one or those 5 that they need in order to fill those roles. Yes, it's important to get your foot in the door, but like I said, diversify your efforts to make sure that you're getting the biggest return on your investment in terms of the time and effort that you're putting into it. So if all you're doing is applying to job boards and you're getting a lot of radio silence, that's because, again, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. People need to know that you're out there. So, use some other means, use some networking, or like I said, getting referred to positions, reaching out to your network and letting them know that you're looking for positions, putting it on your LinkedIn profile that you are actively looking for positions. Because if you limit yourself to just, your immediate circle, then, that's not a lot of resources for you to tap into. What's most beneficial is through that 6 degrees of separation, a friend of a friend of a friend or what have you, or if you're putting it out on a platform like LinkedIn, that is going to have more resources readily available to you that could potentially help you get to your next role. Now, that may not happen tomorrow or next week. That's something that you need to take time to cultivate. So make sure that you're spending some time cultivating those relationships, making sure that you're not just kind of doing a one and done, that you post once, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. It's something that you need to be consistent and persistent in order to see some results. So making sure, again, you're not cheating the system by, copying and pasting job descriptions or using that constellation of, of keywords in your bullet points just to get your foot in the door. Make sure that the experience that you have is going to be able to back that up. So you are making a positive impression and with the employer and not wasting their time. And then, finally, you want to make sure that you are being you. 9 times out of 10, where in my experience, where people fail in their job searches is trying to pretend to be something that they're not, and kind of going back to cheating the system. You want to be you. You want an employer who is going to be able to fall in love with you, flaws and all. That's going to ensure that you're going to be entering a work environment where you're going to feel purposeful and productive at the end of the day. You spend too much time at work to have to fake the funk on a daily basis. So be you. Let them fall in love with you, flaws and all. And if they can do that, you're off to a great working relationship. Anything else, you're dodging a bullet. And again, that's probably individuals that you don't want to be working with. So, getting a rejection is often a time saver for you, and also saving you from yourself. So like I said, be authentic with who you are, your experience that you bring to the table, because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, your experience is something that you can't change. You can't change that to morph and to fit into something that, an employer wants. And I can tell you from the recruiter side, oftentimes those job descriptions that you see online haven't been rewritten or tweaked in a number of years and don't often fit everything that hiring manager is looking for. So if you edit out that experience to fit just that one job description, you could be doing yourself a disservice, because you don't know what they're filtering on the back end of that. And so instead of you constantly trying to anticipate what an employer is looking for, be honest about your experience, what you bring to the table, and be very self-aware of what your transferable skills are that could be an asset to that company, not just for that role, but in general. Because again, more than likely, that's what's going to get your resume picked up and what's going to get your foot in the door, not using a bunch of key search words or regurgitating a job description in order to pacify an applicant tracking system. All righty. Well, that kind of concludes all the information I have prepared to share with you today. If there are any additional questions, I'd love to take those on right now.
Yes, there's one from Kathy. And so Kathy Conant, please turn on your microphone and ask your question.
Sure.
Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning, Yolanda. Thank you so much for your presentation. I so appreciate it. My question is, I'm wondering, how much experience do you need to have in an area before you can kind of, sort of honestly list it on your, in those skills area? For example, if you have a job where, like maybe is 90%, fundraising, but you helped out with special events, like, is there kind of a rule of thumb for how much those sort of skills that you've touched on, you can kind of say, yeah, I do that?
Yeah, it doesn't, like I said, I think that's why I like to focus more on the accomplishments, because accomplishments, I think all of us are Swiss Army knives at the end of the day in our roles anymore, and that you're not just focusing on one thing. You're usually toggling between other things, and special projects and stretch assignments are all a part of that, and that's all a part of the career development as well. So yes, if you worked on an event and it touches upon some of those skills that a job is looking for, and you had some great experiences doing that, doing it one time may not qualify you to do it as a full-time job, but if you've done it a few times in several roles and you want to highlight a few of those, those key ones that perhaps you would like to share some stories about, and subsequent interviews, things of that nature, then yes, highlight those kind of things on the resume. And I would also say that applies to, volunteer work. Or if you've been in some kind of, some affiliations or organizations, if you had some leadership opportunities to do that. Also, if you have, some hobbies or interests that might be tied to that, there are ways of adding that as experience. While you may not have been paid for it, it's experience, and it shows that you've been able to demonstrate you're able to do that. I had a client a few days ago who I was working with who designs websites for an organization, has been doing that for a couple of years. I'm like, well, you do realize that that's real work experience. He's like, well, I'm not getting paid for it. I'm like, but you're designing websites. That's experience. And I was just like, and you are looking for a role where that's a primary function. So why wouldn't you put that in your resume to demonstrate that you've been doing that for the last 3 years? So again, don't feel as though everything has to be sequestered. There's, there are ways of pulling from your collective experiences and shining a spotlight on that to show what you bring to the table. Because your experience is a collection of many things, not just from your last job, but over your work history that you've accumulated that's got you to what you're doing now. So, your most current role may not touch upon some of those things that the job description is talking about, but your role 3 years ago where you were doing that may touch upon that. So absolutely shine a spotlight on that so employers know that you have the capability or at least have had some exposure to it.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, Mary R. has a question. If you are getting no responses, should you lower your standards and go for a lesser role with hopes to grow? And Mary, you can also unmute if you want to expand on that.
Hi, Mary. So I'm going to answer your question with a question. Are the job titles that you are applying to, are they similar to the job that you have left, or are you looking to transition into something completely different? Because going back to what I said earlier, that what you don't want to do is have that imposter syndrome and downgrade yourself. Oftentimes what I've found with candidates who are getting that kind of radio silence is that they're applying for positions that are too low level for them. Is that they're looking at the entry level positions because they are feeling that imposter syndrome. So they feel as though they have to start in the mailroom and work their way up, or in order to be able to compete, that they need to go to a lower level because maybe their salary is too high, or again, they're filtering themselves out. So, take a long, hard look as to whether your skills may be too advanced for the positions that you are applying to, and maybe you need to kick it up a notch. So it could be the opposite. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, when I've gotten that issue with clients, it's always been the opposite, that they need to be applying up, not down.
Okay,
Great
terrific.
question. Thank you, Mary. Any other questions?
There are none that are posted, so while we wait 1 or 2 more moments, maybe just click to your next slide since it has your contact information.
Great.
So for anyone that would like to follow up with Yolanda sooner before later, you can take a screenshot. These slides will be, actually they are on our website right now, the PSG of mercercounty.org. So Yolanda, thank you for sharing your slides.
You're welcome.
And what I forgot to show you when I did the website dog and pony show a few minutes ago, in the upper right corner of each page of the website is a link called Meeting Presentation Documents. So all of our presenters who've shared documentation with us, and Yolanda is one of them, we have their documents there. So the current page is 2020 presenters, but then there's links for each of the prior years right through 2013. We started doing this in late 2013. Kathy has a follow-up question, so
Sure.
Kathy.
Oh, thanks again. My question is, I notice when I upload my resume, when I'm applying online, that it'll then sort of, I guess, take me to an application page where it sort of uploads some of the jobs I've had. And I'm wondering at that point, is that where you would need to list all your jobs chronologically, and then even maybe ones that weren't included on the resume? And then how far back would you need to go at that point in the system, or in the process of that application?
Yeah, and it usually that differs with every company. There's not a standard with that. Some companies may ask you for your last 3 jobs. There are some applicant tracking systems that may parse that information and automatically upload that or autofill that from your resume. So again, every company is different. Every applicant tracking system in terms of their functionality is different. So there's no blanket answer to that question. So,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so you just want to make sure that you're reading what, the specifications that they're asking you for and making sure that you're following that accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Kathy and Yolanda. All right, so, oops, there it is. Just when I thought there were no more, here's one from David.
Hi, David.
Hi,
Question, Sensei.
Yolanda.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for your question.
Sure. My question really was just around the word sensei. It is a Japanese word. I know that it is borrowed here in the U.S. for, as a teacher or an instructor. So I was just wondering if you did have international experience in Japan.
Actually, yes, my clients are global, and I have actually had clients on 6 of the 7 continents. So yes, I do a lot of global clients. I am currently working with clients in Italy, Thailand, and Scotland.
Awesome. I lived in Japan for 4.5 years, so that's why.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, my brother actually lived in Japan for 4 years.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I'll be sending you an email.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, and thank you for your question. You're the first person who actually asked me a question about the sensei name, so I appreciate that.
And also, if you're a fan of Karate Kid, their series Cobra Kai is on Netflix.
Yes.
They talk about Sensei all the time.
Oh my goodness, the day that show came out, my husband sent me the craziest meme. He is just like, "Oh, sensei, wax on, wax off."
Yeah. So now there's a question also from Jim. How do you network into a target company where you have no connections?
So there's a chance that you may have a connection that you're not aware of. So what I like to do is use, if you're active on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is great for networking and doing a little espionage. What I typically like to do is to go through my contacts and look through their contacts to see if they are connected with anyone at any of the companies that I'm interested in, and ask them to do a warm email introduction. Again, that's a great way to kind of remove the stranger danger, and it also, kind of ensures that, and kind of guilts people into responding to you. If the introduction is coming from someone that you both mutually know, 9 times out of 10, then they'll feel compelled to respond to you.
So you gotta look into your own contacts first to see if they're contacting with somebody at the target company then.
What's that? I'm sorry, you were breaking up just a little bit.
You should look at your own contacts first and see
Yes,
if they're
on
connected to
LinkedIn.
your target company.
Yes, yeah. See who they're connected to, because they may have people in their contacts that work for that company. And then, like I said, you can reach out and ask them if they would be willing to do an introduction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question.
Sure, warm connections are very powerful.
Oh God, yes, absolutely. Most of my opportunities have come through, like 6 degrees of separation, a friend of a friend of a friend. So like I said, it's very, very powerful. And that's the power of LinkedIn, is that you have access to resources that you may not ordinarily have access to. So by putting that out there, you're not only reaching your contacts, but that's then going to show up on their feed and show up to all of their contacts as well. So it's a much wider reach and much more visibility that you may not have gotten under, with normal platforms. So again, LinkedIn can be your best friend.
And actually, Yolanda, and you and I were talking about this the other day. That's how you and I became
Yes.
introduced.
Exactly.
So we had a presenter in September. Her name is Erin Haywood, not someone you recognize the name right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Also, she's a coach, and she mentioned your topic, this very topic, the beating the bots. So during the presentation, I wrote your name down, and afterwards I looked you up on LinkedIn and reached out, and I don't remember exactly, but said a hello, can we talk type of message.
Yeah.
And you were very receptive, and I'm very appreciative of that. So warm connections, folks, absolutely work. Or name dropping, I guess, is what you do. So LinkedIn is very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that seems to be the end of the questions from our members. So thank you, members, certainly for participating. Yolanda,
David?
there's one coming in.
Sure.
One last one.
Sure,
it's
Pat.
never over till the fat lady sings. With regard to the last comment about LinkedIn, if you look at a target company and you check the things you just said and you can't find a contact, a hot contact, what's your view of actually sort of cold calling somebody on LinkedIn who works at that company and start a conversation like oh, gee, I'm interested in your company. Can you tell me about it? Just again, to go back to what you had said earlier about getting your foot in the door and about getting some kind of but getting some kind of information about that company.
Yeah, so this would be my advice. Instead of reaching out to them as a job seeker, reach out to them as an information gatherer. Because if they see you as a job seeker, 9 times out of 10, they are going to automatically, ignore you. But if you're looking as an information gatherer, saying, for example, that they have a job title, or you were doing some research on a particular job title or some type of work that their company is doing, and that their name had been recommended to you as a subject matter expert, and you'd like to take some time to talk to them about what it is that they do, and some of the projects that they've recently been working on. That shifts the tone of the conversation. It makes it more about them, and you're kind of stroking their ego, looking at them as a subject matter expert, and people love to talk about themselves. So it's one of those situations where flattery will get you everywhere. So it's just how you angle it. So if you angle it from that perspective, it's going to make you look less opportunistic and less threatening and more inviting. And again, it's more information sharing as opposed to, asking for a favor.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. So Yolanda, once again, thank you so much for joining our group today. Folks, if you did not realize, because I don't think I mentioned this right at the beginning, one nice thing with these virtual meetings is Yolanda has traveled all the way from the greater DC area to be with us.
Yes.
Right, simply via the click of a button. So I'm so appreciative that we have the opportunity to meet you and have you join us, because certainly it would have been a lot more difficult for you to drive up to central New Jersey. Glad you could join us this way. So
yes, and likewise, thank you so much for the opportunity. And you guys were a great group, great questions, wonderful energy. And again, you guys are a great lot. So I have my fingers, toes, and eyes crossed for all of you that you find amazing opportunities. If I've had this much fun with you in the last hour, I can only imagine what it would be like to work with you, which would be a joy and a pleasure. So hopefully employers are able to see that and grasp onto that. So thank you so much for making this such a great experience for me. I appreciate it. And David, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That way you can move on with the rest of your action items, if that's okay right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I have nothing else right to share at the moment, but that's fine. And by the way, we are keeping this meeting session open. In just a few minutes, we're going to just keep it open for open networking. So anyone who wants to hang around, I will turn off the recording at that point, and we're just going to hang around for a little while to chat. Hopefully, and Yolanda, you're welcome to spend as much time as you have available. And I did appreciate, certainly it was at the beginning when you were talking about highlighting accomplishments, not tasks. Everybody has tasks, everybody has job descriptions, but your accomplishments, how you perform them, really are what grab the attention. I'm so glad that Yolanda mentioned that right at the front. And also she talked a lot about transferable skills, and I have in the past and others as well. One thing nice about transferable skills is they don't expire. You may have accomplishments or technical skills that are fairly old. Transferable skills don't expire, so they're very important if your relevant experience is a little bit older than the most current. And another thing about warm connections, a lot of us think, well, our first degree connections are warm connections, and that's probably among the first of them. Yolanda certainly mentioned the 6 degrees of separation. Certainly the second degree can be very powerful by leveraging your first degree. But another place to expand your warm connections is join LinkedIn groups. When you join a LinkedIn group, you can use LinkedIn InMail, their email system, to contact those people in the group individually or your first degree connections, at least when you have the free version of LinkedIn. So it's another way to expand virtually your first degree connections. So
and I'd just like to piggyback on that, Dave, that oftentimes many of those groups may have their own job boards with opportunities that may not be available elsewhere for you to take a look at. So keep that in mind as well.
I would think you particularly want to join your alma mater. That's always a warm connection.
Oh God, yes, and you already have a commonality. You graduated from the same school, so you don't have just the weather to talk about and let the radio silence kick in.
And that's a group that will have thousands of potential connections. Yes. So not just your class from how many years ago, but each of the classes that participate. So yeah, great places. Want to also let you know what's coming up with PSG of Mercer County over the next couple of weeks. Next week will be February 5th. Hopefully the groundhog a few days earlier will be very favorable to us if you're a fan of the groundhog. Janice Coleman will be here, and her topic is Let's Get This Game Started, how to go hard in the paint with your job search in 2021. So going hard in the paint, it's a sports metaphor. So she's going to be talking about ramping up your job search that way. That's next week, February 5th. The following week, February 12th, Mark Beal will be back. Proactive prospecting wins the job. And Mark is a marketing expert and very active in the job seeker support community. And he will be here on February 12th. There are other groups, of course, that continue to be active virtually as well. The Breakfast Club of New Jersey will be presenting on February 13th, so a couple weeks away. You can check them out, thebreakfastclubnj.com, thebreakfastclubnj.com, and on February 13th at 8 o'clock in the morning. And actually I think it's February 12th if I've got the date wrong. Let me make sure I got the date. No, it is the 13th. It is going to be absolutely Abby Kohut will be presenting your 2021 career, becoming a victor rather than a victim. So always wonderful when Abby gives a presentation. And then also our kind of cousin groups, PSG of Central New Jersey meets each Monday at 10:30 in the morning, psgcnj.biz, psgcnj.biz, and also PSG of Morris County, psgmc.org, meets on Wednesdays at 9:30, and Janelle Rosino will be presenting this Wednesday at psgmc.org. Also, New Jersey Job Seekers, the oldest continuously running job seeker support group in the country. They meet on Tuesdays at 7:30 in the evening. They meet virtually also. And you can find their Zoom meeting link on the PSG of Mercer County LinkedIn group. I posted it just the other day. If you have it from before, it's the same link each week. They're able to reuse their link. So that's what's coming up over the next couple of weeks. So that's what we have coming up. And once again, our special thanks to Yolanda for joining and participating with us. And we hope that you all stay warm, safe, and healthy over the next weeks and months. And until we get to see you again, either virtually or in person, I'll simply say goodbye, everybody.